It's the Irish Motor Racing Club who run the event, and their president, Brian Chute, explains to Alan Tyndall what the park is all about.
Annual festival for the enthusiast, for the Dublin motor enthusiast. It builds up over the year where they've been driving through this park from January to September or August, depending on the date we run it, and suddenly one Wednesday they find a bridge, barriers, crash barriers, crowd barriers, and they suddenly realise, the Dublin realise, it's on again. It's been happening since 1952, and they suddenly realise that once again we have this annual festival of motorsport with over 200 cars entering and racing against each other on the Saturday and Sunday.
The international motor races at the Phoenix Park take many months of organisation, but in 1986 the actual building of the circuit started early on the Friday before racing. Club President Brian Chute scored points with a good IMRC point, while Clerk of the Works David Bars, well, he got in a point as well. The main task on Friday was to put up the pedestrian bridge to connect the isolated paddock area with the rest of Dublin. Oh, and to charge for the privilege, which is fair enough, as it costs a fortune to put on Dublin's great free show. Charlie had wreaked havoc on the park only 4 days previously, and on the Tuesday of race week, the event was almost cancelled due to storm damage. Some of the first visitors on Friday morning were the French Barral team. David Bars had the task of building the circuit and the bridge with Tommy Tates, Senior and Junior, Rob Taylor, Colin Fitzsimons, Jimmy Maloney, and the rest of David Bars' private army. The Barney Manley Bridge was first used in 1984 and was opened by 3 times world champion Jackie Stewart with Barney Manley. Sadly, Barney died 3 months later. Barney Manley was a former president of the Irish Motor Racing Club and had been actively involved with the club and the Phoenix Park for almost 50 years. The main road in the park was closed while the bridge building continued. Cars were watched by a vast crowd of Dubliners. At scrutiny, Paula, Carol and Aileen handled the paperwork. Scrutineering takes place on the 2 nights before racing, where the cars are checked for class eligibility and safety. Scrutineer Jerry demonstrated the technology of modern scrutineering. Saturday morning was bright and clear, and practice took place for the Formula Fords, the MG Metros, and the classic MGs. Fiats and Mini 850s combined for the first race of the weekend. Austin Bishop got out into the lead. But it was John Donoghue who overcooked. Mervyn Miller challenges for the lead, but Austin Bishop won the race at the flag, with Mervyn Miller second and his brother David in Barbara's shopping car in third place. Joe Moran was the Mini 850 winner, with Eamon Corrigan second and Sean Donnelly third. If you put barriers in front of trees, they can fall over. But then trees can be replanted, can't they? The Norman Williams Cars MG race got going very, very well. The Northern car preparation expert Jackie Cochran had a very good win in his MGB, with Maurice Cassidy second, and he also got the fastest lap, while third place went to Des Kiernan in his MG Midget. The first Shell Oils Formula Ford 1600 race of the weekend developed into a battle between Cliff Dempsey, number 5, and number 70, young Tommy O'Connor. That Greystones swinger, George McLashan, added to his Shell Championship points by taking third place. PJ Fallon disturbed the tire protection wall and his adrenaline valves, but he did finish fourth. This annual production saloon car race, here also viewed from Ratra Corner, shows the really interesting style of Roger Eccles in the Shanahan-sponsored Mercedes 16 valve, and it caused mouths to water all around the circuit as he dominated the race. John Hayes in the Airsail Capri was a fine second, and he won his class, while Norman Williams in his Capri, which was built purely for the park, only in 1 week finished third. John Burns, normally a park master, was out of luck this year, but caused excitement with his attacking driving. J.J. Kelly tries to look important for the cameras on behalf of the marshals. The MG Metros were firm favourites at the park in 1986, and the real characters were the French Barral team. This was the practice for the little tin tops, making the first appearance in Ireland and winning many hearts at the same time, even if they didn't follow the arrows.
basically you get into fourth gear, coming up to the first corner, which is a 90 right. It's a very wide approach. The road narrows down to about half. Then you accelerate right up through the gears into fourth, flat all the way around a very long right-hander. Then you're braking for the third gear right-hander, which is about 80 miles an hour, back in the top. And you've got a slight left-hander, which you start braking just as you go into it for another 90 right, which brings you back onto the start-finish. I think that's more or less what it is.
Eddie Fitzgerald, the clerk of the course, gets advice from Cecil Orr, the chief timekeeper and professional angler, on how to behave in front of television cameras. Michael O'Carroll passed the audition.
We start next week, planning 87. We decide what we want to do. We start looking for the race we want to run. And we then sit down and find the budget. We approach the sponsors, we see if we can raise the money. This year we've been very lucky, we've had good sponsorship.
Alan Kelly starts the action on Sunday morning, another glorious day with the Formula Ford 2000 practice. Karts are not used to racing on a circuit of 1.98 miles, and they use this practice to good effect. For safety reasons, a chicane was erected at the Ashtown Gate between Mountjoy and Ratra. It had to be built quickly, and Alec Taylor was dressed in his leprechaun's outfit just for the occasion. The beauty of karts is that if they stop, you can tuck them under your arm, even if you are from hangover racing. Dominic Murray, number 9, and number 7, Austin Bishop, had a ding-dong battle throughout the 6-lap race. Murray's kart failed in sight of the flag, relegating him to second behind Bishop, with Billy Kinnan finishing in third place. The Phoenix Park Motor Races on a Sunday afternoon is very socially acceptable. Austin Rover, Irish Shell, Mercedes Commercials, TMC, the Irish Motor Racing Club, and SP Tires, the Dunlop people, all had facilities for the guests who added to the 55,000 crowd that turned up on Sunday afternoon. Tommy Tate, the Assistant Clerk of Works, chats with Rosemary Smith. Tommy shows that he is well brought up when he moves away from Niall Willans. Isn't that right, Tommy? Paddy Byrne and Mark Huff returned from the circuit inspection before allowing the Formula VWs on their way. The main feature of the VW race was the riveting fight for the lead over the 10 laps between Kerry Lawless, number 2, and Eugene Heary, number 17. Donald Donnelly takes it wide at Mountjoy Corner. On the last lap, Kerry Lawless threw away his lead and had to be content with third behind Winner Heary and Donald O'Neill, who slipped through to second. The Tom Mann Cars Classic race brought nostalgia to the big crowd, but Graham Lowndes and Bill Harney had scant respect for each other's cars. Maurice Cassidy ran away with the race in his 4.1 litre Sunbeam Tiger, but his brother Ed in the Austin Healey number 6, number 15 Terry Mullally in the MGC, and Des Kiernan number 9 in the Midget had a good dice. The classics look appropriate at the Phoenix Park as David Miller shows in David Dunn's Lagonda. Maurice Cassidy won the race and Ed Cassidy beat Terry Mullally to the line to take second. Des Kiernan won the handicap section. The Dunlop Hawthorne race for production saloons always causes great interest. It's a handicap race, effectively a reverse grid, with the fast cars on the back with the smaller capacity cars first away. Englishman Roger Eccles in the Mercedes was last to cross the line for the start as the pole man joined him in the main straight. After 6 laps, limit man Brian Flanagan, number 37, in the Fiesta was fighting for the lead with Mervyn Miller and Gordon Kellett's Escort. It was at this point that the race was stopped due to an accident at Rattler Corner, with damage only to cars, thank goodness. No result was declared. The second Charles Oils Formula Ford 1600 race of the two-day event featured the fastest drivers over the 15 laps. Experience. Jonathan McGall, number 10, at 18 years, was locked in combat with last year's Phoenix Park winner Vivian Daly, number 8, and Northern veterans Tom Graham and Arnie Black. For 15 laps, this race raged, sadly without Alan McGarrity, who retired at this point. Jonathan McGall put up one of his best performances ever with the Sonatigen gang hard behind him. Daly, with 3 championship wins for this year, shows his class here, and he's very determined to make it 2 wins in the Phoenix Park in a row. This wheel-to-wheel battle went on, much to the great delight of the crowd. Jonathan McGold seized back the lead but lost it at this point, and in fact Daly went on to win the 10-lap race, which was reduced due to lack of time. In second place was Tom Graham, third was Arnie Black, with McGold finishing in 4th place.
achievement.
26 MG Metros roared away down the Shell Straight. Billy Coleman on the left in the red and white car avoids the carnage but loses his spoiler. Now see this action from the in-car camera in Billy's car. For the first 3 laps, David Loudon led from Peter Baldwin, but there was a 7-car combat at the head of the field at this point. Britain and France, but Billy Coleman and Michael Cullen represented Ireland, and Cullen was the first Irishman home. Peter Baldwin, number 5, took over the lead from Loudon 66. Chris Lewis held third place for most of the race. Phoenix Park was the third round of the 7 in the MG Metro Challenge, and it is the only one-make series recognized by the Sports European governing body. Peter Baldwin was the winner, with Dave Loudon holding second to the finish. Dave Carvell took the third slot. Michael Cullen was a fine ninth in his first MG Metro race. Lap for Formula Ford 2000 cars always looks spectacular as the drivers weave from side to side to warm up the wide, slick tyres. First lap, Martin Boyle, number 37, and Joe Greenan, 38, disputed the lead, with Brendan McKenna, number 41, third. Tommy Keneally was fourth, chased by Ivan Thompson. First, but was excluded due to a design infringement. Alan Kelly, who finished second, was also excluded, and appeals were still pending when this script was written. However, Leslie Wright crossed the line third, with Brendan McKenna and Tommy Keneally following. magazine were the sponsors of the GT race. John Keeney, with the Wexford-built TMC car, was going for 3 wins in a row at the Phoenix Park. The glove Mickey recovers well from his spin at Dunlop Corner. Some drivers forget to follow the arrows. George Crozier stuffed it in a fairly big way. Enda Nolan shows that rally drivers like to do it in a spin. Rally cars were included with the GTs, and John Keeney won his 3rd in a row. George Crozier, Maurice Mitten and Morgan Dempsey all held the 2nd slot for a while, but it was former Sexton Trophy winner and current rallyman Richie Healy who crossed the line in 2nd place. Pat White took 3rd place in his Opel rally car. people celebrate John Keeney's win in the TMC compound. The Irish Motor Racing Club's president, Brian Chute, still with the taste of champagne on his lips, joins the clerk of the course, Eddie Fitzgerald, for the first planning meeting for 1987. Is Richard Warbrick of Dunlop making an offer?